7 days, Mr. Sunak. That's 7 days for you to make a difference when it comes to protecting us, our children, our grandchildren, and all life that lives on this planet. Sometimes you don't have to break the law when you can use the law. Now, many of you will know that a couple of weeks ago I put out a programme on Channel 4 entitled "Is it time to break the law?" in the context of climate protesting. It was a deliberately controversial programme there to promote discussion about democracy in the UK, our right to protest, and what might happen if our government don't listen to those climate protesters. I didn't incite people to break the law. So it's somewhat ironic that on the very same day, our Prime Minister, Mr. Sunak, may have indeed broken the law himself. You see, he stood up and announced rowing back on some of our net zero policy commitments in regard to motor vehicles and gas boilers. And I believe that he was acting illegally. And on that account, I sent him a legal letter that starts a judicial review process, meaning that if Mr. Sunak does not about turn on the delays to the implementation of the policies he announced, I will apply to the High Court to challenge that change of plan. I believe we have a timeline in place to help the UK meet net zero, and this can't be changed at the will of the Prime Minister, because he doesn't have the legal right to make that decision. I believe we have a carefully structured statutory framework which surrounds the implementation of key policies set down in the government's carbon budget delivery plan. What I believe is that the policies on vehicles and boilers were abandoned without any public consultation, without informing the Climate Change Committee, and critically, without informing Parliament itself. Mr. Sunak did not confirm that the government will meet its 6th carbon budget or how it intends to do so, and that's required by sections 14 and 13 of the Climate Change Act. I sent my letter to Mr. Sunak 7 days ago. It contains a raft of questions which, if he doesn't answer adequately or about turn yet again in regard to those policies, I may have the option of taking him to court. 7 days, Mr. Sunak. That's 7 days for you to make a difference when it comes to protecting us, our children, our grandchildren, and all life that lives on this planet. 7 days.
Chris Packham not pulling any punches there against the UK government with potential legal action against Rishi Sunak for failing to act on climate change. Brilliant to see well-known faces coming out and being vocal about the climate situation. We'll wish Chris Packham the best of luck with this. Hopefully he'll get a response from Rishi Sunak, and it's a totally legitimate thing to do. It's not a publicity stunt. We are in a crisis. This government is acting illegally if it's not going to be carrying out its climate commitments that it's made at other summits and meetings, and that has been put into legislation, as you saw in the video there. And several government bodies and other international bodies have been overlooked in these decisions with the policies that Sunak announced last week. For example, the extension on the date with petrol and diesel car sales. We did a video about that last week. Do check that out, and check out our other content on Activism Uncensored. Give us a subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to get the latest news on what's happening in activism all over the world. So just back to this story about Chris Packham. We'll keep you up to date with the deadline, the 7-day deadline that Chris Packham gave there. Perhaps there will be some response from the government. I'm really hoping that there is. It's really well timed as well, riding off the back of the Tory conference where they've been emphasising this ridiculous culture war that they're trying to drum up, the war on wokeness. That includes persecution of several groups, but including climate activists. And while officially the Prime Minister and other people will say in statements that they are committed to certain things, including net zero by 2050. They really aren't acting as though they're committed at all. In fact, if anything, they are going in the opposite direction. And there's a lot of corruption and nepotism and greed behind that, which we won't get into on this episode, but has been brought up on our previous videos. So once again, we will wish Chris Packham the very best of luck with this endeavour. And again, just to remind you, it's completely legitimate, not any kind of publicity stunt for Packham. Even though he has put out his documentary, Is It Time to Break the Law, recently, this is just the latest in his efforts, in his ongoing actions against climate change. He's been a professional scientist for several decades now and is sharing the concerns of all of us. But it's, again, brilliant to see public figures speaking out like this. So we'll keep you up to date with any developments on this story as it comes. Thanks for sticking with us on Activism Uncensored. We'll be back with you soon, but until then, take care, people.